I spent that winter in a small settlement in the Russian Far East, not far from the forest edge where the land stretched into something far less managed. I had gone there to help a distant relative repair an old house, but by January the work slowed and the days became quiet. The cold was constant. Even inside, the walls creaked at night, and every task took longer than it should. Most people kept to themselves, especially after dark. There was one woman I saw more often than others. Her name was Galina Ivanovna. She lived alone in a small wooden house at the edge of the village. People said she had been there longer than anyone else. She was already over 80, but she moved carefully and deliberately, like someone who had learned to manage her energy. I met her properly one morning when I was clearing snow from the path. She came out with a metal bucket, nodding once in greeting. I offered to help carry it, but she refused with a small shake of her head. "I can manage," she said. We ended up talking for a few minutes anyway. Her voice was calm, not unfriendly, just reserved. "You should not wander far," she told me. "Forest is different in winter." I nodded, assuming she meant the usual dangers. Getting lost, freezing, maybe wolves. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. A few days later, I noticed something unusual near her fence. Large tracks in the snow, deeper and wider than any dog's. They came from the direction of the forest and stopped just short of her yard. I crouched down to look closer. The shape was unmistakable. Big cat tracks. I felt a sudden unease. Tigers were known in the region, but they avoided people most of the time. When I mentioned it to another villager, he shrugged. "They pass sometimes," he said, "if hungry." That didn't make me feel better. I went to Galina's house that afternoon. She didn't seem surprised when I brought up the tracks. In fact, she seemed to expect the question. She came at night. Galina said simply, "Came." I asked, "The tiger?" She said it as if it were no different from saying a stray dog had passed through. I asked if she had seen it. "No, but I hear and I see signs." She paused for a moment, then added, "Something is wrong with her." The next evening, just before dusk, I saw it. I was near the edge of the village, checking a woodpile, when I noticed movement between the trees. At first, I thought it was just the wind shifting snow from branches. Then the shape stepped forward. The tiger moved slowly, almost carefully. Even from a distance, I could see it wasn't moving normally. Its body seemed heavy, its steps uneven. I stayed still, barely breathing. It didn't come closer to the houses. It paused, looked around briefly, then turned back toward the forest. Only after it disappeared did I realize how tense my body had been. That night I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen. A tiger that close to people wasn't normal. Something had pushed it out of its usual territory. The next morning I went back to Galina. "She's not hunting properly," Galina said after I described what I saw. "Too slow. And that makes her dangerous." I replied. Galina nodded yes. There was a long pause. Then she added, also pregnant. I looked at her, unsure how she could be certain. She just tapped her chest lightly. "You see enough years, you know?" I suggested calling wildlife authorities. There were teams that dealt with situations like this, tracking, relocating, sometimes tranquilizing animals. Galina didn't dismiss the idea, but she didn't seem convinced. "They will come, yes," she said, "but may be too late, or they shoot if she is weak." That possibility stayed with me. We agreed I would try to make contact, but communication from the village wasn't always reliable. It could take time. Meanwhile, the tiger was still out there, injured and getting weaker. Galena seemed to have made a decision before I had. That afternoon I saw her carrying something toward the edge of her yard. It was a sack of frozen meat, scraps saved from earlier in the winter. "You should not do that," I said immediately. She looked at me, not annoyed, just steady. "If she starves, she comes closer to people," Galena said. "Better she eats here than goes." It was a risk either way. I helped her place the meat near the tree line, far enough from the house to keep distance. Then we went back inside and waited. We didn't have to wait long. Just after dark we heard it. A low sound, not quite a growl, more like a deep breath carried on the cold air. We stayed inside, lights dimmed. Through the small window I could just make out movement near where we had left the meat. The tiger moved slowly, pausing often. It lowered its head, sniffed, then began to eat. It didn't stay long. Within minutes it was gone again, disappearing back into the trees. Neither of us spoke for a while. Over the next 2 days the pattern repeated. Each evening we left food. Each night the tiger came. But it started coming closer, not into the yard, but nearer than before. Its path shifted, its movements less cautious. I began to worry that we were making it too comfortable. Galena noticed too. She cannot travel far. She said, "Too weak." That made the situation feel more urgent, not less. On the 3rd day I saw her clearly. It was still daylight, though fading, when she appeared at the edge of the trees. Her body looked thinner than I expected, ribs faintly visible under her coat. One of her hind legs seemed stiff, dragging slightly with each step. Her belly was swollen. There was no doubt she was pregnant. She stopped and looked toward the house. For a moment we just stood there, watching each other. There was no aggression in her posture, just exhaustion. Finally, I managed to reach the regional wildlife office. The connection was poor, but I explained as best I could injured tiger, close to a village, likely pregnant. They said they would send a team, but it could take a day or more. Weather, distance, and other calls all slowed things down. In the meantime, we were told to keep our distance and avoid direct contact. That was easier said than done. The tiger was already part of our daily routine. That evening, something changed. The tiger came earlier than usual, before full dark. It moved even more slowly than before. It reached the spot where we had left food, but instead of eating immediately, it lay down. At first, I thought it was resting. Then it didn't get back up. Galena and I watched from inside for a long time. The tiger barely moved, only its sides rising and falling. "She cannot go back," Galena said quietly. We both knew what that meant. We didn't approach her directly. Instead, we moved the food closer, a little at a time, and left water nearby. Each time we stepped back immediately, giving her space. Sometimes she ate. Sometimes she didn't. The night felt longer than any before. We took turns watching, making sure she was still breathing. Galena stayed calm, but I could see the concern in the way she moved, more slowly than usual. "We just keep her here," she said, "until they come." It wasn't much, but it was something. The rescue team arrived just after sunrise. They worked carefully, speaking in low voices, moving with experience. They confirmed what we had suspected: the tiger was severely weakened, likely from injury and lack of food, and close to giving birth. They prepared a tranquilizer, waited for the right moment, and then approached. I stood back with Galena, watching. She is strong, Galena said almost to herself, just needs help. The team loaded the tiger onto a transport sled, securing her gently. They said she had a chance. As they left, the yard felt strangely empty. Galena turned back toward her house without ceremony. She will live or not, she said. We did what we could. I followed her inside, the cold still sharp, but somehow less heavy than before.